Hello and welcome to the HR Like a Boss podcast. I'm your host, John Bernatovich. I have embarked on a journey to get to know amazingly awesome HR and business professionals with the hope to find out what it takes to do HR like a boss. If you enjoy the show, please make sure that you subscribe and hit that 5-star rating. Welcome again to another episode of the HR Like a Boss podcast. I'm your host, John Bernatovich. Super excited to have Arlene Rahn on the show today. Arlene and I were waiting patiently at a recent event, and her and I were just chatting, getting to know one another. And the next thing I knew, she told me she was going to be one of the keynote speakers at an event at the University of Akron. And I thought, oh my gosh, I knew she was really cool, but then she elevated her status a bit, did an incredible job on stage. And I thought, you know what, Arlene, you'd be a great guest on the HR Like a Boss podcast. She took me up on the invite, and here we are. So Arlene, welcome to the HR Like a Boss podcast.
Well, John, thank you. And I had the flip side of that experience. I was chatting with you, and as you heard in my talk, I'm an introvert, and so it takes me a while to get geared up. And your smooth talking and your focused conversation around what you do and why you were there really set me in motion for having a really fun time when I was up on stage. So thank you.
How would you describe the purpose of human resources?
Well, to me, the purpose of human resources should be to maximize all human potential in an organization. And human potential comes packaged in many different ways, with different skill sets, different attitudes, different likes, dislikes. And when you maximize that human potential, you bring it together in ways that no one individual or no even small group of individuals could really perform. And so organizations that are really good at maximizing human potential are able to achieve really great things. People like working there, and people stay there. You know, I think about great places to work, right? Or I think about other studies that have found that people stay when they really feel they have an opportunity to contribute.
How does DEIB align with human resources?
Well, I already shared my definition of human resources, how to maximizing that human potential. When I think about DEIB, and now we say the B, sometimes I drop the B, but I think most people are including it these days. So diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. When I think about that, I take that maximizing human potential and marry it with creating spaces where people believe, and I capitalize believe they are valued and appreciated, and that their contribution matters. So DEIB is about understanding that. One, I always say put diversity to the side, because diversity is going to show up regardless, right? And in HR, we have to understand that everyone who walks through that door is diverse. So let's just put that aside. It's the I that's really important. Can we create that skill set, right, in leaders and in others, that enables that diversity to be maximized and to work effectively? So diversity is a mindset and a set of skills that enables people to maximize the diversity in the workforce that they have. And so that's the alignment there. And so diverse inclusion is about creating not only the skill set but also the culture, right? And when we can do that, the diversity stays, it's engaged, right? People stay, they're engaged. And then we have a platform from which to really focus on equity. All too often, if we start with equity, we'll start seeing gaps, and we'll start looking at data. And sometimes DEI data, the issue is not a DEI problem. It could be something else, right? It could be something else. It could be something in the larger environment. It could be something in our operations, or it does not necessarily have to be connected to what is going on in DEI. So let's get the I first, then let's recognize the D, Then let's build that strong platform to engage and understand what equity should look like for that organization.
How do we make sure, and what are your suggestions on how organizations can make an impact through DEIB and encourage inclusive HR leadership?
Sure. So an inclusive leader, and specifically an inclusive HR leader, I think of having a couple of characteristics, and I like to break it down into a model. So I'm going to use the CARE model, use the acronym CARE. Um, First, it's about civility, really enforcing that people treat each other in a way that is polite and candid. And then I'll also add curiosity, that they have curiosity about the people that they're working for and with. HR is supremely important in demonstrating those basic characteristics. Next, I think about, and you highlighted in HR Like a Boss, I think it's early on, this thing about authenticity, sort of think differently about yourself, but don't think too differently, be your authentic self. When HR leads with authenticity, it really encourages other people to do so. I think in the past, when I was back in a corporate career over 35 years ago, HR seemed very, very narrow in terms of their ability to be authentic and be themselves. They just, were there to check boxes most of the time. So that element of authenticity is really, really important, because when you're authentic as an HR leader and you're inclusive, then you're open, you're accessible. Authenticity brings on accessibility, and an HR inclusive leader needs to be that. I'll finish it out real quickly with an R, 2 R's: respect, always showing respect. Now, we throw that word around a lot, but respecting even when we're different, and then being resilient. Oftentimes, respect isn't just one way, so we have to be flexible. So resilience gives us that flexibility that we need. And then lastly, and I loved it in HR Like a Boss, early on, you mentioned emotional intelligence and your trajectory or your path with emotional intelligence. And I would say the one piece of emotional intelligence that I would pull out would be empathy. So those would be the characteristics that I think an HR leader who is inclusive and like a boss would really exemplify.
How would you describe someone that does HR like a boss?
In short, someone who does HR like a boss, they're inclusive, right? And they get results.
Arlene, incredible job. Thank you for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for checking out the HR Like a Boss podcast. If it resonates with you, please leave a rating and review, or better yet, subscribe and share with a friend. Until next time, let's continue to aspire to do amazingly awesome HR.